And we are live. Welcome to the first episode of the Blue Line Icing podcast presented by Thunderblogsports.com, a part of the Bullpen Cart podcast feed, a new podcast on our feed covering, as you might guess, hockey and the NHL and everything surrounding it. I, of course, am the G-Man, Jordy Cannell, and joining me, since it's been about a month and a half since we heard his glorious voice, is my man, Greg Piatelli. How are you, my friend?
I would say the World Series hangover is just starting to kick in, I guess. You could say I've been World Series euphoric, drunk until this
rolled
moment.
It right into the Thunder Cup.
Until this moment. So, I think it's like that, like when you're falling asleep or when you lay down after drinking all day and night, and you like feel like, okay, I'm going to be in trouble tomorrow. That's where I am right now.
Do you have the spins from the World Series?
You know what I mean? Like that. That's sort of like, okay, this is awesome. This is an epic night. I feel good now, but I'm going to feel like crap tomorrow. That's what I am right now. So we'll still loving it, feel good, but I woke up, look around, and see the Bruins and Celtics not quite living up to their preseason expectations, if you will.
Yeah, the expectations are we'll get to those. We're going to talk about those a little bit. Obviously, talking about hockey, the Flyers, we'll have a lot to talk about with them. The Sixers doing well, though. But kind of to give a background of how we've come onto this.
Timeout.
Okay, timeout.
Why would we have a lot to talk about for a 9th out of 10th place team? Or no, not even more than that.
No, they're 8 out of 8 in the Metropolitan Division.
Okay, but they're 9th out of 10th in the wild cards. So they're not even close to that. Like, why would we have a lot to talk about with the Flyers?
They just fired their GM. It's a big deal.
I'm just messing with you. All right.
All right. And I'll get, when we talk about the Flyers, we can get it. But kind of as a background, that is something you've probably, if you listen to the end of the Bullpen Cart podcasts with me and Greg, we have talked some hockey, some basketball, more hockey though, because Greg and I both played it and pay more attention to it. So we finally decided, partially because I miss hearing Greg's voice every week since we have so many days until spring training begins. And partially just because we love the NHL and love talking about it, decided to do this podcast. I know we've been talking about it for a couple weeks, but with the World Series and the MLB playoffs right at the start of the hockey season, and then with the week surrounding Thanksgiving, and all of that and college football heating up, it was a little tough to try to get everybody lined up, and that includes Matt with the Fun V Tailgate podcast. So we finally figured out how to get this off the ground, and the Flyers firing was a little bit of the Flyers Hextall firing was a little bit of the catalyst for that. So we really do want to hear what you guys think of in the comments, both on iTunes and on the blog post on thunderblogsports.com. But yeah, Greg, the NHL season, it's been, some teams are looking like what we expected coming into the year. Other teams are a little disappointing. What have your thoughts been from the first couple, probably month and a half of the season?
If we're being honest, I think that hockey is on an upswing. I think it's on an uptick, and I think a ton of people tuned in last year, partly because of the Vegas story, and partly because Ovechkin. It's good when one of the best superstars wins, especially a likable guy who's out there. Crosby wins all the time, but Crosby's more of a, go to work every day and don't brag about it, whereas Ovechkin is sort of doesn't necessarily brag, but he's much more of a character and personality. So, I think hockey's on an upswing, and part of that is Instagram and social media helping it with all the videos and people being able to see it live or be able to see the superstars and how much young talent there is in the NHL. And the other part of it is, I think people are realizing that it's a great time. Best sporting event live. Yes, I did play hockey, but at the same time, I played a whole bunch of other sports, and nothing really compares to a live NHL game, in my opinion. What do you think so far?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think definitely the end of last year, hearing that this Vegas team and sort of the stories surrounding them on the entire season, it definitely helped keep an eye out on the sport, especially in the US, because in Canada, it obviously is king. But it definitely helped with the regular season story because you hear a lot of different sports fans that say they're more playoff hockey fans and things like that. But I think that momentum certainly has carried it through, especially with Ovechkin and coming off the World Series or the Stanley Cup and them basically just partying through the summer. I'd even say even some of the news stories because people saw Tom Wilson and all the stuff he was doing during the playoffs and him having his whole saga, if you will, throughout the first 25-ish games of the season and the suspensions, the non-suspensions, the appeals, all that good stuff. So I think the storylines, along with the social media, I think you're absolutely right there. I think hockey does a really great job of the team camaraderie of it and the fact that they aren't afraid to show not like them getting absolutely hammered, but hockey players are so much more open of showing their team parties of them dressing up on Halloween. Not that NBA players aren't either, but at least you get a really good glimpse into their lives, what they do with that, and all the different teammate costumes, whether it's the Mario Kart type team costume or something like that. So I feel the social media game of these players is certainly on the upswing, and the fact that you have so many different young guys, and it seems like there's more and more and more every single year that are emerging as the faces of the NHL, really getting out there on social media, whether it's Connor McDavid, whether it's a guy like Patrick Laine or PK Subban or whomever. It just really is. It's helping to really
McDavid
grow the exposure.
McDavid was just on the cover of GQ, and so was earlier was Matthews, maybe, right?
Yeah, Austin Matthews was.
So how often does a hockey player get on GQ? And Subban obviously is all over the place with his social media presence and everything. So
and with Lindsey Vonn.
Yeah, exactly. So it's on an upswing, and it's awesome to see because the talent, at least in our lifetime, we've had some that you and I have seen some top players, but top to bottom,
we're alive for the last 9 years of Gretzky. So
but I'm saying top to bottom, the depth I think is
it's so much. It's so great.
Yeah, truly, and that's there's so much youth and so much young talent, and nothing more exciting than that North American under 25 or whatever age was.
Team North America from the World Cup.
And how many of those guys are leading goal scorers now in the NHL, and so it's crazy. It's awesome. So Jordy, let's transition here. Professional transition. What is your biggest surprise in terms of Eastern Conference for team? And it can be let's get your biggest positive surprise.
My biggest positive surprise is going to be the New York Rangers. I think their story kind of coming in, you heard they're going to be this aging team with a lot of young talent. They have guys, like Jimmy Vesey. They still have Kevin Hayes. They have a lot of guys, but really the big story was going to be, are they going to deal Henrik Lundqvist? And he's obviously been very good for them. And even on back-to-back losses, they bounced back pretty well in their most recent game. But the Rangers currently sit in third place in the Metropolitan Division. They have 28 points. They're 3 back of the Capitals. They're 7 back of the Tampa Bay Lightning in terms of number 1 in the East. But they, despite the fact that their goal differential is negative, it's 75 goals for and 76 against, they certainly are putting together some good wins, and it's been a great story at home, especially at Madison Square Garden. I don't know, Greg, I think you've been there for a game, but that is definitely one of the more, because you hear about it so much more for basketball, but it's definitely a great hockey venue, and the Rangers put on a good show. So seeing them currently at a 10-4 home record, not the best road team, so we'll see if they can either right that ship or if that's going to eventually catch up to them, one side or the other, but a team that really was sort of an afterthought in a division that features Sidney Crosby and the Penguins, the Devils, and all the young talent they have, the Stanley Cup champion Capitals, the Blue Jackets, the defensive stalwarts they normally are, and sadly the Flyers and the hype their offense showed at the beginning of the year. The Rangers and the Islanders, who are also right there, both seemed like afterthoughts.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, and they have a rookie head coach, former BU head coach, Boston guy, played at Kent under my dad. Not a big deal. David Quinn. Yeah, David Quinn. No, so out of you mentioned that they're like an older team, but Jordy, out of 15 forwards that they have currently listed on their roster,
Yeah, I
only two of
realized I
them
was
only
wrong.
only two of them are born in the 80s,
Yeah,
and one of
I
those
realized I was
being
pretty quickly
87. So
wrong in saying that, just because I was thinking of really Hank, but also Zuccarello and a couple of those other
Mark Stahl on defense. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, but
How
that's the
old's
thing
Tim
is
Shattenkirk? He's got to be close to 30.
he's 89, so yeah, he's
Yeah. All
29
right.
years old. Yeah, no, so but they also made some trades, right? They got rid of some guys and brought in some even more young guys recently, like Ryan Strome and things like that. So
That's a good
they,
point. Yeah.
yeah, and it's funny because you would think a team that is stacking up on young talent is in a rebuilding mode, but if you can
It's clicking
rebuild,
right away.
yeah, if you can rebuild and win at the same time, I mean, that's a pretty good combo. And yeah, I don't know how long they're gonna hold this third place right now, and 3 points out of first for them. You know, with Pittsburgh obviously going to have a run at some point, and you know, you mentioned the other teams in their division, so it'd be cool if they could do it and keep it up. But at some point, Lundqvist is going to get tired and blah blah blah. So great choice there, Jordy, for a hot team or for biggest surprise. I'm going to go with the other team, the New York Islanders.
Yeah, that's a really good
Uh,
pick.
Thank you. Losing their
Probably a more
best.
sustainable pick than the Rangers, to be honest.
No, the Rangers are my first choice, but because you picked them,
Okay.
I turned over there and switched to the Islanders, mainly because their best player is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone expected them to.
Everybody thought they were going to be dead last.
Yeah, everyone expected them to be the worst, if not second to worst.
Yeah.
But I mean, surprisingly, and um, you know, probably everyone, but they've done really well, and for whatever reason, and you know, a big reason is you know, Barzell and Josh Bailey and Anders Lee, the Eberle. You know, they have some guys who are putting up some points for this team, and their goalies, Grice is 2.45 goals against.
Yeah.
You know,
He's been
8-4.
solid.
Yeah, 8-4 record. I mean, that's pretty save percentage of point or of 925. That's really good. So, you know, they're finding ways to win, I guess. You know, and that's all you really need in the NHL, and that's a big, yeah, big surprise for me. They have a plus goal differential, so it's crazy. They're just in the, you know, they're just in the good division.
Yeah, and the thing with them too is there's only a few teams in the Eastern Conference that have let up fewer goals, and only one in their division. That's the Carolina Hurricanes. But every other team that's in the other division that has let up lesser goals. Tampa Bay was a solid goalie. Toronto was a solid goalie and a solid defensive core. The Bruins, same case, and if not better. And then the Sabres, who have been an absolute unit recently, winning 9 straight. So, I mean, good for the Islanders. Again, kind of the same theme of they were kind of left out to dry when Tavares left. And even bringing in Barry Trotz, who got his ring last night. Good for him in a road loss. But,
Yeah.
You know, they've definitely been a great surprise and a good story.
No, and great segue there, bringing up the Sabres, because, I mean, how can we – you would think that everyone would be taught that would be the big surprise of the season, but –
I thought they were going to be pretty good coming in.
Exactly, and that's the thing that if people don't know you and I mean, we're been high in the Sabres for a couple of years now. You know, Eichel and Skinner and Palmaville and
Sammy Reinhart.
Yep. Connor Sheary, you know, Casey Middlestat, World Junior kid from last year. Obviously, Dahlin, World Juniors, Sabatka. Yep. You know, they have some names that are just, you know, unreal and some.
Yeah.
I mean, their biggest weakness, I would say, is their goaltending. But you know, even their goaltending, they have a couple guys that are 2.5, 2.52, 2.53 save percentage. So they're not bad. They're getting good goaltending, and I mean, another team that's so young that with the right contracts could be good for a couple of years here. So,
Yeah.
For me, I mean, honorable mention goes to them, but like I said, I think you and I were higher on them than the public.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think yes, especially once they got the Skinner trade over the summer, you kind of thought, all right, Buffalo's starting to get into that win now, with the start of the window in that mentality. So yeah, definitely, it's good to see that because there were some pretty dark years between basically how long ago did they trade Ryan Miller? 5 years ago, and that even then they had a couple dark years then, and the Sabres were really kind of in those. Ugh.
And my boy Zach Bogosian, played with him growing up.
Did you really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah,
That guy's
man.
a stud at defense.
Yeah, he was a stud on defense back in the day too.
Yeah, imagine 27 minutes in a year that's highlighted with not as much with suspensions, but not as much fighting and whatnot. Definitely good for him.
Yeah. So do you want to stick in the East and go with our biggest surprise, or do you want to head over to the West and do positive again?
No, let's stay in the East. Biggest surprise in terms of a disappointment. Greg, I'm gonna let you kick this one off since I got to go first.
Wow, Jordy, thank you. I mean, for me, it's either Florida or the Bruins.
Okay.
You know, I knew the Bruins were gonna have a down year simply because Tampa and Toronto were just as good, and you can't even call it a down year because they have 30 points, which would be right up there leading the Metro, but they're in the Atlantic, so it's tough. But all right, you know what, Jordy? I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna go Bruins. You know what?
Okay.
Not a huge disappointment because tough division, still doing well.
You'd be good enough for the 5 seed in general,
right? Not me, but the Bruins. Yeah, no,
Bruins.
I'll go Devils. I'll go with my other team, the Devils, just because.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
I had the two teams just because you pick first, blah blah blah. But the Devils, just because of how they finished last year, they had the MVP. A healthy Brian Boyle. Knock on wood for now. How he would come back and do well, and but I guess our own fault for not realizing that the buck kind of stopped there, and they sort of, they're good, but do they have a ton of depth? And I guess that's sort of the misconception that I had, but I expect a lot from them, and Palmieri, Queenanville. And his kid Brett Sini was at Merrimack last year. Saw him play. Travis Zajac, obviously Taylor Hall. So, and then they have some solid D, but I was higher on them than I think I should have been, just based on. They're in the Metro, so they have the easier division, and the way they finished last year, you'd think that they would be able to do it again, but apparently not.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because they certainly had been this team that really utilized Taylor Hall, and he certainly deserved the MVP last year of how he basically put the team on his back to finish it. They're currently at a -8 run differential, 68 goals for, 76 against. The 76 against isn't that terrible. The Blue Jackets, who they have Sergei Bobrovsky, they have that great defense. They've let up 78. The Capitals have let up 2 less. And as I mentioned, the Islanders and Hurricanes have let up less there, but only 68 goals for, and that's really where they're missing it there, that offensive depth. And there's a lot of different teams in the NHL that can beat that. Surprisingly, the Chicago Blackhawks are not one of them, despite their prolific goal scoring. But it's one of those things where, if they can't totally figure it out and they can't get their young guys going, because that was one thing that happened last year, right? They get the Adam Henrique trade, and he seemed to make some sort of a difference. And where they can go from here at a 9-10-4 record, so basically 9-14, seeing where they can try to figure out their next move in this good division. I mean, 2-9 on the road, 2-9-1, really. That's tough. It's tough if you can't go on the road in this division, especially when you have a team like Pittsburgh who's playing 500 puck at home. That's going to improve. maybe the Islanders go down from 6-3-2. I think the Rangers are going to stay up there. I think the Capitals are going to stay as high as they are. I mean, who knows with the Hurricanes? That might fall too, because that's kind of a weird team, with them shipping up Jeff Skinner, as we mentioned, at Buffalo in the offseason.
Another team that's supposed to have a down year.
And they're right now, and they're in fifth place right now, or sixth place right now in the division. But I don't know, fifth. I'm counting right. I don't know. The Devils are an interesting story because they have that potential to do it. It's just it's a question of whether or not they can finally figure it out, kind of like the Flyers did last year. If you look at the standings, granted this was around January 1st when the Flyers and Penguins were in those two spots, the Penguins in sixth as they currently are in the Metropolitan Division, and the Flyers in seventh. Both obviously turned it around and got the 2 and 3 seeds in the division respectively. So only being less than 10 points out of it, you're not totally, putting yourself to bed, but Thanksgiving has come and gone, and that is at least some sort of litmus test.
Yeah. No, and that's a great point, and I think that's a big reason why I didn't go Pittsburgh, because they're going to have some sort of run here, and they're going to – I mean, the Rangers, it's a great story, but they're not going to – if they do maintain it, it'd be like a Vegas run, but if – they're not going to maintain this clip. The Islanders, you think Carolina, you figure all three of those teams are going to drop here, and you think Pittsburgh, just the offensive juggernaut that they are, and they'll get their goaltending right at some point. They're just too good to be
+3 in terms of their goal differential.
Yeah, I mean, it's their goaltending and defense right now that's letting them down, but they'll be fine. They'll figure it out, and really, I mean, it's every year. They're playing 500 right now. They've been deep in the playoffs for how many years straight, and that you talk about that weighs a toll on teams all the time. So. Again, we're in agreement that they're going to make a run here.
People forget they fired coaches in 2 of their 3 Stanley Cup seasons in the Crosby era.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's how bad of starts they've had, and that any team has had, and has turned it around. But the Penguins, crazily enough, in both 2 of Sidney Crosby's 3 Stanley Cups, they've been so bad basically through the first 3 months of the season that they've fired their coach and turned it around. I think the first one they fired him really late in the season, and then they rattled off like 10 straight going into the playoffs. But still, the Penguins certainly have that with the weapons they have surrounding it. And even with their defense and goaltending being kind of spotty, it's just a matter of their offense picking it up, because they've let up less goals than the Capitals, than the Blue Jackets, than the Rangers, and then any other team in the other division is out of the playoff race. But that
was a great point, Jordy. Great point. Yeah. I mean, again, their starting goaltender, Matt Murray, has a 4.08 goals against average.
Yeah.
You're not winning games with that.
No, you're certainly not.
Yeah, and Jari, their backup last year, I think he's been hurt maybe, but he came back finally.
Yeah, I think so too.
Hopefully he'll be good, and they won't have to rely on Murray so much, or maybe Murray is hurt. Maybe, who knows? But it's really been their goal.
3rd year in the league. Like
Murray,
it's okay if he's a little. Yeah, Murray. Remember, he was a rookie during that first of the 2 cup runs, and then he was in his first year. I don't think he was, because he didn't play enough regular season games. I don't think he gave up his rookie status. So 2 years ago, he was a rookie.
Gotcha. That's crazy.
Yeah, and their second cup run.
Exactly. They'll be fine, and they'll be good. Speaking of the team, loaded talent here, Jordy. Move to the West. You got Nashville.
Oh, I have to get my team.
Oh, sorry. I didn't even. Hey,
but they are loaded with. They're in theory loaded with talent, and they've had goaltending issues. A lot stemming from injury, but still, their backup goalie is talented enough that it could make a difference. You had mentioned then the Florida Panthers, just a team that you thought was fun. Like 2 years ago, they really had gotten it together and really seemed like a team that could contend in this Atlantic Division, and really kind of keep somewhat of a pace. Not as much as Tampa Bay or Toronto, but at least be that fringe playoff team that if they made some noise, and they almost did it last year. They were a game away, and it was the Flyers who beating the Rangers and getting that last playoff spot that was the difference maker. But I think they won like 11 straight going into the playoffs. So who knows if they can do something like that. Obviously, lightning striking twice is tough, but I mentioned it. The big thing and the big story for them is Roberto Luongo being hurt. He had not been and he hadn't been for a while, but he'd been at a 3.07 goal against average clip, and James Reimer, who had been coming in for him, is at a 3.39. He, if you remember, came from Toronto and also had been on one of the LA teams that won the Stanley Cup, and had been a pretty solid backup for LA and then a starter for Toronto. So a really good backup choice there, but certainly players falling around him that aren't necessarily getting the job done on defense. And the offense has certainly been stagnant, to say the least.
No, great point. And I mean, what was it? 2 years ago, they were a legit shot at winning, right?
Yeah, I think 2 years ago
they made like a pretty solid run.
2 years ago, I think they lost to Ottawa in the first round.
Well, way off. But the point is that they're a playoff team.
But I think they were like the 1 seed in the division.
Right. They had a great. I mean, good pick, Jordy. Good pick. You would think with their D and their goaltending that they would, like you said, be more on top of it. But I mean, if you don't have the offense, you don't have the offense.
I mean, Alexander Barkov's only 8 goals right now in 22 games. You'd expect that rate to go up higher. Same with Evgeny Davidov. Mike Hoffman, the guy they ended up having that Ottawa had to dump to San Jose because of his wife's psycho saga, and then San Jose turned around and just shipped him out. He's the one leading the team in points right now, with 12 goals and 11 assists. So really, you'd expect something to change in terms of who's scoring and who's leading this team, whether or not it's their solid defenders stepping up like Yandel or Ekblad, excuse me. But
and that's their problem is really lack of goal scoring ability and scoring, depth. They're already, not doing great, but not a lot of names and the team that's not really built for the future. They're not really built to. I don't know what their draft picks look like, but they're not really built to have a good future moving forward. And I'm sure part of that is with Luongo there eating up money in net. But Jordy, I mean, any overall last stories you want to talk about the East before we move on? We can do Flyers at the end, but
we can do Flyers at the end. The one I do want to mention, even though they are in dead last, as you would think after they traded away Carlson, the Ottawa Senators still aren't a complete shit show as you would have thought. I say that knowing that they've let up 104 goals. They've also scored 85 goals, so a game that they're featured in is going to be pretty entertaining. They are only 9-12-3, so 9-15. They're a point behind the Flyers for dead last in the conference. They have the same number of wins as Florida, but they've played 2 extra games. It is something kind of funny when you look at them and what they've been able to do. They've actually been decent at home. They're terrible on the road, which is actually a good sign for me as a Flyers fan, considering tonight, when we're recording it, Tuesday night, they're in Philadelphia. But they're still an exciting team to watch if you ever do catch any of their games, because they do tend to be high scoring, Greg.
And they're super young too.
They are.
They're they have a couple guys who have been in the league for a little bit, but they're also a young team. But they're going to be good for a couple of years. It's the opposite problem with the Panthers. They have a ton of guys who can score, but their D Anderson's been all right, but their D is really a big issue for them. So, they scored 85 goals. That's 3 less than Toronto. So they're right there in terms of goal scoring. They just give up a ton, and maybe that's the system. You never want to blame one unit in terms of goalie or D, but maybe it's the system they're playing. But they're scoring a bunch, and bright future in Ottawa, and that's a good thing. Like you said, everyone thought they'd be way worse, but they not doing as bad as we all thought. So, Jordy, quick transition. Western Conference. Let's go positive team. Who you got?
So I'm going to go with the Calgary Flames. Depending on who your team is, I have one that's sort of a out of the box pick. I'm going to go with the Flames, mainly just because of the fact that right now they're at a higher clip, both in terms of scoring goals and allowing less goals than a team that we thought after they were on the other end of the Erik Karlsson trade, the San Jose Sharks, would be running away with the division. Calgary currently leads the Pacific, and they are really showing signs that the team we saw 2 years ago, the team that made the playoffs, made a little bit of noise, that they're really, back on track with Goudreau, with Kachuk, with Monahan. Really, you can start naming off some of their other guys on the team as well that might be a little bit older, but are certainly showing their signs of being a veteran leader, like a Mikael Backlund, like James Neal's on the team, even though he's -5 right now. He's still a presence on that team. I'm really happy to see them be there, especially with David Rittich at a 2.04 clip in terms of his goals against average, with Mike Smith still playing pretty solid, even though he's under 500. But they have solid goaltending.
They're getting great goaltending from Rittich, who super young kid, but he's really playing well for them this year, and probably one of the. I mean,
he's not a rookie, is he?
No.
Yeah, I'm pulling him up.
He's I think he's second. Yeah, he's second in goals against average behind Rene. So he's having an unbelievable year in terms of just from a stats point. Sorry, a number standpoint. He's second in, like I said, goals against behind Rene, and then he's fourth save percentage. So he's right there again with wins and all that. So he's doing well, having a good year. So. Great pick, Jordy. That was good. That was my second pick. So good for you. That was good for us. I mean, we're crushing it right now.
Same page, man. Great minds. Great minds.
And the Flames they're really a complete team. They got the offense. They have the grit. They have the skill. They have defensemen. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a move to pick up another defenseman here before the playoffs, or maybe even
that.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe a goaltender, but they have the forwards, maybe some third, maybe fourth line depth, but they have the forwards. They have maybe one key defenseman away or a goaltender away from making a serious run at things. So
I'd go for defense if I was them. I think, granted, Winnipeg didn't end up winning the Western Conference, but if Connor Hellebuck showed anything last year, if your young goalie's hot, keep riding him and let him build that confidence for the future.
Yeah, but Hellebuck's also their number one. You want your number one guy to be the number one guy, kind of like what the Bruins are going through right now with Halak and Tuukka. But
we can talk about that later.
Great choice, Jordy. What did you say?
Who's your positive team?
The Colorado Avalanche.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. Mainly because their first line of McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen is out of this world, like unbelievable. Probably
that's one of the best lines in hockey.
It rivals the Bruins. The
Bruins' first line is pretty insane.
It rivals, if not better, than Bergeron, Marchand, and Pasta. Marchand's on a little slump. Bergeron's hurt, so it rivals that line. And Rantanen, this kid is leading the NHL in virtually every offensive category. Not goals, but 38 points. 28.
And second is his centerman, Nate McKinnon, his captain.
Exactly. and then Landeskog. I mean, all three of them are out of this.
Landeskog's number one in the NHL in plus minus.
Yeah, I mean, all three of them are having great. And then assist, Rantanen. I mean, the three of them are just super young. I mean, this kid Rantanen's 22. McKinnon was taken a year before him, part of that super team we were talking about. But I mean, they right now, Jordy, 75 points combined, most of any line in the NHL, any three teammates randomly in the NHL. So they might be. I mean, when it's all said and done, they might be as a unit close to, if not better than the Bruins' first line. So. This Avalanche team, they snuck in the playoffs last year, and the late run sort of helped them get in, and the first line is definitely helping them. But solid goaltending, right?
Same
Certainly.
on Var Marlov, solid goaltender who's been, he's had his ups and downs, but he has been the ups when they're up, and they're up right now to 2.34 goal against clip. and a certain backup goalie who turned it on and got Braden Holtby righted on his way to helping lead the Capitals to a Stanley Cup. That is Philip Grubauer.
Yeah.
Their goalie farm, or their goalie pen, whatever you want to call it, pretty solid there. And also they have pretty solid defense core with Tyson Berry leading the way, but they also got guys like Ian Cole, Eric Johnson still hanging around there. Sammy Girard, he's at 9 points right now. They're certainly on the right path.
Yeah, and that was my next point, is that they don't. I mean, they need some help in terms of depth, but with some of the the second, third line contributing a little more than they are. But I mean, if you can get that many points from your first line, and might as well ride them if you can ride them, and have them go a long way. So, who was your other team that you said you were going to go with if I didn't pick?
Yeah, so my outside of the box surprise is just that the Predators are still far and away ahead of the rest of the Central Division. The reason why I say that is we mentioned him, but Pekka Rinne was hurt for a little bit I believe it was the end of October into the early bit of November. But he's still, he's been absolutely lights out at a 1.68 goals against average. But they had Yusei Saros as their backup goalie, who was very solid in Rinne's absence and really helped that team to the point that they're at. And this is classic Smashville. They got, not a ton of goals when you look at the overall standings. At 81, there's teams in the Eastern Conference, the aforementioned Ottawa Senators, that do have more. Toronto Maple Leafs, Tampa Bay Lightning, the Capitals, the Blue Jackets. But Nashville's grinding you out. They got a ton of guys that are on pace for double-digit goals. They got just real team atmosphere and that push that they make, where they have all these different guys. They've already have 2 and 20 points. They already. I can't even count this up. They're in double digits of guys who have more than 10 points already on this year. And that's what the Predators did 2 years ago when they made their run to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a really good sign for them.
No, good call. And I think the big difference this year is Nick Bonino being healthy.
Yes.
He wasn't
very good point.
Wasn't healthy last year. And he, if you remember, helped the Penguins make their cup runs there for a couple of years. So, I mean, they're having the offense, which is matching their defense as well as their goaltending. And he's a big reason why. And I think, that we've talked about a couple times with a couple of different teams, if you don't have offense, defense is super important, and that was proven. But, I think proven by the Vegas Golden Knights, you can have defense and good goaltending and make it pretty far. And even Nashville, two back-to-back Western Conference teams, good defense, good goaltending, make it all the way to the finals, and then they lose to offensive wagons in the East. So, this year's Predators team has a whole bunch of scorers, which is new, that from their forwards.
Once again, in the classic Smashville, 4 of their top 8 points getters are defensemen. So they really love running it through the top of the zone, and they do a really good job with it. And good on them that they're doing that. Roman Yossi's leading the way in terms of defensemen. He's third in the team in points, but Philip Forsberg and Ryan Johansson doing what they've been doing for the Predators for however many years now.
Yeah, I mean, and with a goal differential of plus 23, I mean, you're not getting much better than that outside of Tampa.
No.
So, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it a surprise, but I hear what your point is.
It was like outside of the box just because.
Yeah, I hear you.
Because they had the goalie was hurt for a bit. But Calgary was too good to pass up.
Good. So I got for these surprising in a negative way. I got a couple choices, but I'll start with the one, Winnipeg.
Yep. I like that.
Yes, they have one of the best players in all of the NHL. In
Patrick Laine.
Yeah, Patrick Laine, of course. And then obviously Blake Wheeler, former Bruin. Not a big deal. But a team that to go so far the year before in the playoffs and to follow it up with a sluggish start for sure. A little surprising, if we're being honest. And
yeah.
They still have. I mean, did they lose anybody big? No, they got everyone back, right? And Hellebuck hasn't been great, or I mean, he's been 2.91, pretty good save goals against average. Yeah, he's been decent. But I think it's for me. It was. I mean, Line is good, but he's not quite. I mean, 19 goals in 22 games. I mean, the guy's an animal, right? So he's good. Team's doing underperforming for sure, and it was very surprising to me. I thought for sure that they would be up there with Nashville, sort of running train in the West, but sort of reverse effect here that they can't win on the road. They're 5-5 on the road as opposed to 8-2 at home. So for me, Winnipeg has to be my number one surprise. Jordy, who do you got?
Just quickly, it's a really good point on them. I mean, Laine's nearly at 20 goals already. He's at a point per game. You have Scheifele, Wheeler, both over a point per game. Same with Kyle Connor. But yeah, I mean, I think it's just more of a collapse on defense, like you said, Hellebuck. And their backups also. He's 4-1. They're both in that 2 range of a goals against average, but you'd hope that they'd have a little bit better of a clip offensively. No offense to Minnesota, but they're behind Minnesota, they're behind Colorado, Nashville, in terms of offense within their division, and teams like Vancouver, San Jose, and Calgary are in the other division are there. So they're right in the middle of the pack offensively in the Western Conference. So, Greg, I really like that pick.
Thank you, Jordy.
Yeah, I got you. Mine is going to be, you know what? I'm going to go with the Arizona Coyotes because they came in as a team that looked like they could make some noise. They'd made some trades in the offseason and looked like they could be a team, and especially in a Pacific Division, that year in, year out, we're never really quite sure what to assess of them. Like I mentioned with Calgary, it looked like it was going to be San Jose's to lose. And the rest of the division, you could have thought, Calgary maybe gets it going. Vegas continues where they left off. Vancouver, they're super young. What are they going to do? And they're basically showing that right now at 77 goals, 94 against. Arizona, though, with the additions that they made, they're still at 53 goals on the year, 62 against. So they're really a defensive stalwart with guys like Oliver Ekman-Larsson leading the way for them, both as a captain and just as a solid guy in terms of the team effort. But he only has 12 points. Clayton Keller, their offensive stud, last year was right up there in the Rookie of the Year, the Calder Trophy, I almost said Calder Cup race. He's at 14 points, leading the way with 6 goals. But I mean, really, that's the thing, is that they've been underperforming offensively. They get guys like Richard Panik, who he's only got 6 points, 4 goals, 2 assists. Galchenyuk, the guy, one of the additions they got, he's been banged up a little bit, but still, you'd love to see this team perform a little better and kind of live up to the where we thought they could have been. Because a guy like Darcy Kemper, who's a solid goalie for them, and Antti Ranta is right up there too in their goalie pen. They're both sub-3 in terms of their goals against average. So I don't know. It just really is a team that looked like they could be this young studs, almost like what we've been seeing at a couple different teams we've talked about, whether it's Colorado, the Islanders, the Rangers, or even probably a step down from, but the Buffalo Sabres. We could have thought this team could have been right there in the Pacific race, especially because that's always a huge toss-up throughout the year.
Yeah, I hear it, love it. I don't love it, actually, because that was my team. For those who listen to the other pods on this program, that was my team from last year that I kept telling you to look out for, right? Because of how young their roster was and how much talent I thought they had, and they certainly are underperforming this year. That's a great point, and I mean, Clayton Keller, like we talked about, not having as good of a start as last year, but still leading the team in goal or points, I should say. Still one of the better guys on the team, which is, for a kid that's 19 years old, 20 years old, should be a sophomore in college or junior in college. I mean, it's impressive, but I mean, or I guess expected for him to have some lows, but I think this team, they're young. and they have that. But at the end of the day, I mean, do you really expect them to be anywhere in the West? Do you expect them to be anywhere higher than where they are?
I could have thought they'd get close, like a four. I don't think they would have been a wild card team considering how good the Central is, but I thought maybe like fourth or fifth in the division. Obviously, Vancouver's doing pretty well for themselves. That's another good surprise, even though defensively, similar to an Ottawa Senators team, they're really lacking there. Edmonton's another one we could have thrown out there, although I think just we've sadly gotten to the point where we need to see Edmonton perform at the clip from 2 years ago before we can start recrowning them as this, Pacific darling. Sadly, I would love to.
A team that I wanted to talk about was the LA Kings.
Well, they've been in a complete tailspin. They fire their coach.
Yeah, but
they fire their GM too.
What they remind me of is the San Francisco Giants from baseball this year. Go out.
Oh.
Yeah, go
That's
out,
a good call.
Thank you. Go out, make a ton of moves for some older, talented, established guys who are sort of on the back end of their career, and turn around and don't look now. Everyone's hyping them up before the season. They still got Quick. They still got blah, blah, blah. Everyone's hyping them up. And what do? Go out and lay an egg. So, I mean, talk more about the comparison, but I think that, for me, has to be it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the top points getters for the LA Kings. Number one, or tie for number one, is Ilya Kovalchuk, who just came back from the KHL. Mm-hmm. Then Drew Doughty, then Kopitar, then Jeff Carter, Tyler Toffoli, Dustin Byfuglien. Those are your top 6 points getters. They're the only ones in double digits. And Greg, what's their average age? 32?
Maybe
even
more,
if you throw Kovalchuk? Yeah, even if you throw Kovalchuk, it's probably 32, 33.
Yeah, I mean, Kovalchuk was born in 83, so he's he's fucking old. But yeah, I mean, they're certainly
Jeff
not.
Carter was a rookie 12 years ago, or 13 years ago. 05-06 for the Flyers.
Dustin Brown was born in 84. Jeff Carter 85.
Yeah.
I mean, they even have
Kopitar's got to be 85 or 86.
Yeah, Jeff Carter's 85. Who'd you say? Oh, Kopitar. Kopitar's 87, but still, I mean, that's still 30 what? 32, 33. So
32, 33, yeah.
That's the opposite of young talent on this team, and it really reminds me of the San Francisco Giants from this past year. Phaneuf.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I had to bring it up, but Phaneuf on D. I mean, Doughty's an 89, so I mean, he's pushing 30, but he's still one of the premier defensemen.
He's not old. 89, 90, they're not old. Yeah.
No, I meant okay, you got it. But no, that would be my if Winnipeg wasn't it, that would be my for sure underperforming team of the first half. So that takes us. What'd you say?
I just wanted to say, kind of on the point of just being how old they are. They traded a guy, Tanner Pearson, to the Penguins, who was born in 1982. They traded him for Carl Hagelin, who's also getting up there. It's just it's one of those good on Pittsburgh trying to take a flyer on a guy and send a guy like Hagelin off to a team like the Kings, who really, like you said, they're trying to acquire as much older talent. They probably can't. They don't have to have on the books for as much money, so they can think they can accumulate that much stuff. It's just a weird situation they're in. And yeah, that's a fucking great comparison to the San Francisco Giants of this year. Don't call you the prophet for nothing.
I hear you. So, another thing I wanted to bring up, Jordy, is last year, if I heard this correctly, I forget where, or maybe I was reading an article somewhere. I was reading something. I don't think that any coach was fired during the season.
No, that sounds right.
And this year, there's been like 6, right? Yeah. Or 4 or 5, 6, something crazy like that. And then, obviously, good transition on me, the GM there for the Flyers. So, a couple of different GMs, but that's a wild stat. Imagine going through a whole year without an NFL coach firing in week 16, 17, 15, 16, 17. Imagine going through college football without a coach leaving or being fired. Imagine like any sport where a manager coach
In
does
baseball,
not get fired for the
in baseball, I think they have the highest tenure.
Oh, they let them finish the season maybe a little bit, but even then you get guys going early or whatever. But yeah, I mean, I hear you, but it's crazy. It's impressive for hockey for me, I think personally. But this year, the complete opposite. I mean, how many guys were fired early and often, and including the Chicago coach, which is a huge surprise. And he won them 2 cups and
3
or
cups.
3 cups. Sorry, thank you, and just shipped
3
out
cups
like
in 6 years.
Yeah, and I
You
don't
see, he
think
still hangs out in Chicago. He's chugging beers with the boys at Bears games.
I mean, I'm sure I'm sure his house there. His whole life is there, probably. I mean, it's tough because if you can blame the coach all you want, but if you don't have the following depth or backup depth, then what do you really get? But anyway,
Well, you mentioned it with Buffalo. They're in a position where salary wise they can really do some damage. The Blackhawks were beneficial by the fact that they won 3 cups in 6 seasons, and I don't know, I forget when exactly they paid Kane and Taves those matching contracts, but I think it was before the 3rd cup, but still you had a lot of those guys still in place from that first team, and they had a lot of young guys. I think about Dustin Byfuglien. They had him for that first cup run and basically knew that they could replace him. Some questionable trades here and there for him, and that's where they've been the last 2 years. But weird position for the Blackhawks.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, I don't I don't really know what else to say besides that. I mean, it's a wild situation because 2 years ago we're there in the playoffs, and they still have some of the
2 years ago they were the 1 seed in the Western Conference. Technically the 1 seed in the Central, but they had the most overall points in the league in the conference, and they got swept by the Predators.
I was gonna say, was that the year they got swept by the Predators and everything fell apart? So yeah, I mean, I amazing how quickly things fall and change for a franchise organization, and even with some of the top premier guys, even if they are, on the other side of 20. But crazy wild. Jordy, anything else you want to get into before we hop into Flyers talk?
No, yeah, we went through a lot of the different stories that I wanted to really touch on. I mean, Minnesota's right there too in that Central Division. San Jose, I think it's too close to call of whether or not it's a disappointment. It's certainly not a surprise to see them solidly in the playoff position that they're in. Maybe a surprise that they let up 74 goals, but that's really about it on them.
No, I mean they have so many offensive defensemen.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess, yeah, no, that surprised me. I mean, it's their road record. Everyone in the West seems to have a miserable road record, and you could, with the exception of the Predators. And
I haven't looked too deeply at road trips that these Western Conference teams have been making, but I have noticed like San Jose's made their East Coast swing, or one of them, and I think that certainly affects it when you're making these swings. If you're going from even Chicago to Nashville to Philly and then to Detroit, that's still, you're moving through time zones, you're going through a bunch of different weather areas and everything.
Yeah, but I mean, they're pros. I hear you, but they're pros. I mean, yes, a pro life is tough, but like
it's not the AHL where it's the always hungry league, but
no,
still.
It's a matter of like, you're going out east, like I'm sure they have to get up early, 6 a.m., but like still there's chances and days for them to catch up on sleep, I guess what I'm trying to say. And if you're out east and you're I mean, anyway, but if you look at the top teams in the East, their away records are Washington, Columbus, all, very good away on the road. Tampa, Buffalo, Toronto. Those are the top 5.
9-3. That's awesome.
Those are the top 5 teams on top 5 teams in the East, and they all have very good road records. You go to the West, there's only one team that has a good road record, and that's Nashville, and they're 8-3. Everyone else is 500 or right around there. So I mean, the aforementioned Colorado Avalanche 8-4. So to me, I think that's the big difference right now between the West and East and West is the West can't do it on the road, and everyone keeps winning at home and just something about home cooking, I guess.
No, it's a really good point.
Maybe they should. Yeah. Anyway, but all right, Jordy, let's head into Flyer talk.
Yeah, so the Flyers, we let off the show with this, fired Ron Hextall yesterday. Team president and former GM before Hextall was retired, Paul Holmgren, was the one who made the decision to fire Ron Hextall. From a lot of people, myself included, as fans, experts, and whatnot in the Philadelphia area, we're expecting the coach, Dave Haxtell, to be the one that was fired. The Flyers last week, for those who do not know, went to Buffalo, got the wheels blown off there, came home and won out a big grinded out game against the Rangers on Black Friday. Turned out to be 4-0 was the final score, but it was really 1-0 and then a 2-0 goal made it a lot. Was the difference maker about halfway through the third period. They score a empty netter to make it 3-0, and the Flyers scored a goal with like 2 seconds left to put out the final. But then Saturday night they go up to Toronto and get absolutely housed. They lose 7-1. It was a complete shit pumping. You knew there was going to be some change to be made, Greg, and it ended up being the GM Hextall. And you and I have talked about it a lot on this podcast of Hextall doing a good job in getting the Flyers farm system to where it is right now. But as you pointed out, and I agree with you, he was a little too patient in bringing those guys up because a lot of them are still in the AHL or they come up to the NHL for a couple games and go back down, along with a huge glut and goalie ahead of what seems to be the future franchise goalie, Carter Hart. So, Greg, from an outsider's perspective, was firing Hextall, the GM, the right idea instead of firing the coach? Or what would you have done? If this was the Bruins, what would you want it to be?
Oh, I think a new GM is perfect for them. I think that's exactly what they needed. The Bruins got rid of their GM and all their young talent now that they have and on this team that quickly turned around. And I've been saying it for the last 2 years that the Flyers are caught in limbo. And you've been denying it. You've been not listening to me, and I didn't deny. I'm welcoming you. I'm welcoming you on the limbo train. And I'm welcoming you on seeing things clearly from my perspective. And
I always agree that they needed to bring the prospects up. It wasn't.
They have a bunch
of limbo were different.
They have a bunch of no names that aren't doing the job in terms of scoring points. They have a bunch of
Jordan
guys.
Laterra is waiting for his fucking finished cocaine arrest to get processed.
They have the tied for second least amount of goals for in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it's
why would you not? Why would you not bring up more guys like Nolan Patrick?
Well, Nolan Patrick plays. Nolan Patrick's been playing for 2 years.
But I'm saying, why would you not bring up more guys like him?
Yeah. No, it's a very good question. And I have expressed, last year especially, I expressed my frustration that they didn't bring up guys or keep them up in the NHL for longer periods of time. 2 years ago is where we just, where you made the astute point that they need to start doing it. And last year is when I started getting on the train, just so everybody's clear on the limbo train and where I've been at.
Both
our definitions of limbo too were a little different because I was including the farm system being bright, and you were just talking about the playoff success. But
no, it's a team that's caught in limbo, and a team that again.
To your point, though, they have guys like Sam Morin who might not be the next. He's not going to be Gostisbehere. He's not going to be Provorov, but he's a guy, Greg, that last year in the preseason and this year in the preseason, he got solid playing time. And he's a guy, he's a giant on skates. He's maybe not be Zdeno Chara tall, but he's pretty fucking tall. And he's just a goon. You need a guy that's not Radko Gudas, who's this dirty fucking player who maybe 20 years ago doesn't get called for half the shit that he does. But 20 years ago, too, he'd be missing pucks left and right. And he'd be getting his ass kicked in the locker room because he's been fucking up left and right. Or the team would just cut him. They'd send him to the Phantoms, or they just cut him. Like last year, what they've been, especially on defense, outside of Gostisbehere and Provorov, because we talked about coming into this season where their offense could be, and that's certainly underperforming.
By the way,
but their defense.
I love Provorov.
I love Provorov's my favorite Flyer. He and Travis Konechny are my two favorite Flyers. Konechny is Just
Sorry,
he's
keep going with your point.
2.0.
Keep going with your point. Sorry.
But the defense outside of Provorov and Gostisbehere, and Robert Haig is probably the next one. But they bring Travis Sanheim, another young guy, supposed to be a stud, the next guy in line for defense. They bring him up, they send him down. They bring him up, they send him down. They do this with so many different dudes. They did it with Haig a little bit last year.
Well,
and they keep guys
like you're never going to know
just keep him there.
Exactly.
Keep him there.
Exactly. You're never going to know how good a kid's going to be unless he's playing. And
yeah.
the Bruins did this with
especially.
Yeah, and the Bruins did this with Carlo, where they had him play with Chara, and it allowed him. He may or may not have been ready, but he, again, just like Carlo or just like Chara, Carlo's like super tall and allowed him to make some mistakes because he knew he had that blanket and he knew he had that thing, and now he's definitely one of their top defensemen for this team and still a young talent for them. So, I mean, for the Flyers, why not? What? I mean,
nothing to lose at this point.
Exactly. And the scary thing is Gostisbehere, who's supposed to be your best defenseman, is a -12.
Yeah.
Because
he's out on the ice. Actually, Couturier is beating him in on the ice average, but in terms of defensemen, he's on the ice for nearly 21 minutes a game. Robert Haig is next at 19-11. Then it gets to Provorov is higher. He's at 20. He's at 24-43. But still, you're grinding a lot out of him, and yeah, I mean Gostisbehere's on for everything though. That's part of why he's -12. That first line though, as good as they've been offensively, think about it this way: Giroux's -1, Voracek's -10. You have Couturier at 0, connecting at +4. Simmons is -5. So it's like as prolific as these guys have been offensively, they also have been tough on defense.
Can you control your phone one time? Be a professional for us, please.
Hey, I'm sorry. Can you people maybe the Flyers are their ears were burning.
I mean, I didn't hear a word you said because I was so busy listening to that
the buzz,
the vibrating from your phone and thinking about.
I didn't realize it was that bad. I'll have to hear it in post, as they say in the biz. I hear it in post. But anyway, as I said,
think about how miserable it is. Think about how miserable it is that you don't have an iPhone, that your phone, your POS Google phone or POS Android phone.
Miss Lippy, the Google phone,
your Android phone vibrates.
Best phone on the mountain. Best phone on the mountain. We're getting way too deep into inside jokes. What I said though, Greg, was their top two lines. I mean, they're all like Gostisbehere. They are as prolific as they can be on offense. They've had their issues being on defense. Voracek's -10, Simmons is -5. Simmons and Couturier are your two best defensive forwards, and Couturier is even. Giroux's -1, and he has 28 points. Like, it's just tough because they have these.
And you have nothing to lose. Like, why not bring up the young guys? Why not develop? I mean, that's what the Bruins are doing now, and the Bruins are getting enough production from. I mean, they have Backus playing on the third line with two super young kids, and they have David Krejci. These are all Bruins players with two kids that are both under the age of 22, 23. So, I mean, why not put Giroux with two young studs? Why not put Simmons with two young studs? Like, why not?
They do that with Simmons, and they do it with Voracek. This is the weird thing about Dave Haxtell is he juggles lines left and right, and it's tough that he does that.
Yeah, so why not get some chem, get some more things? I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't know enough about them in order to comment on their coaching, but changing a GM definitely helps because that sends a message to the whole organization saying, okay, yes,
everybody's on notice. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and like, okay, for example, one GM may be more of a defensive minded GM, and one GM maybe let's go out and score 1 million goals. So
the issue was that Holmgren, who's the Flyers' previous GM, always had a win now mentality. So he did a good job of acquiring older talent for young prospects, and this was an issue the Flyers had for years. So Hextall did the opposite, and now has been sitting on it. So it's even just a sense of philosophy. That's the difference with the Flyers organization. And kind of on a meta level in terms of sports fandom in Philadelphia, despite the Eagles having an under 500 record, they're still, and they're going to always be, even prior to winning a Super Bowl, the most popular team in the city. The Sixers are now really getting close to Eagles levels of popularity. The Phillies, if they get any of these free agents, especially Bryce Harper, that are apparently coming in and out of Citizens Bank Park, my point being is they're going to leave the Flyers in the dust, a team that always does super well, even when they stink in getting fans in the seats. They're going to get left in the dust in terms of fanhood. So they got worried about this. And at this point, get these young guys up here and do what we were talking about at the top of the show. Get these guys involved and get them to the levels that Joel Embiid's on, what Reese Hoskins is on in terms of social media presence. Do that with Simmons. Do that with Voracek and Giroux. Get it with the young guys too, because I think then you make a connection with this city, a city that loves their Flyers, but a city that if they're not careful, they're going to be the fourth popular team.
But a fourth popular team in a sports town that's still gonna show up.
Oh yeah, they'll still show up, but it's gonna be going to Flyers games is an experience, Greg. I'll just leave it at that.
Let's be honest.
Philliness onto
let's be honest. There's a bunch of scumbags in Philly that they're always gonna be. It's always gonna be an Eagles town.
Think of the opening 5 minutes of Invincible and how bad the Eagles were in that and how many people came. That's what every team is like in Philadelphia, except for the Phillies this past year.
But that's what I'm saying is they're always going to be an Eagles town.
Oh yeah.
And then it's definitely the Flyers are number 2.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's always been the Flyers number 2, but if they're not careful,
and then you're going to flip flop between the Sixers and Phillies. But you know what they shouldn't do, Jordy? That dumbass bullshit. I don't even want to say his name. New dumbass mascot. Get rid of that.
The leader of the Grittisons.
Ew.
The Grittisons.
Ew.
That's how he dressed all of us on Thanksgiving, Greg. He said, "My fellow Grittisons."
Ew. Ew.
Also, shout out to Travis Konechny, Claude Giroux, and your boy Provorov. Travis Konechny scored. Giroux and Provy with the assists, as the Flyers are currently tied with the Senators 1-1 through one period.
I think the win-all mentality, I get it. I think you went a little soapbox there with losing fanhood and all that, because I don't think that's going to ever be the case in Philly. But
yeah,
if we're being honest, but no, I mean,
it's a little bit extreme.
No,
it's
I think
just at the point.
I think
where
the
the Sixers are specifically that could make a scare in terms of the Flyers.
I hear you, but I mean, the Sixers are never going to surpass the Flyers. They're just not going to do it.
Different crowds like both teams.
I hear you. Yeah. But you talk about this. Okay.
Anyway,
we're
splitting atoms.
Let's move back to hockey. Let's move back to switching up GM. Let's move back to. Have you seen any call-ups or any things that have changed in the last couple days or weeks since the GM changing?
Nothing huge coming out of in terms of personnel changing
yet.
I think they're kind of figuring out where they are, and kind of listing the reasons why Hextall got released. I think tonight's a really good litmus test against a team like Ottawa that we mentioned can score goals, so it's still going to test your defense, but they let up a lot of goals. So we'll see what Hextall does. The Flyers have been really on and off at home, to say the least. But we'll see. We'll see where they're at. They got a good little stretch here, and see if they can at least make it a little exciting going into December, a month they're normally not very good at, mainly because they make their West Coast swing because Disney on Ice comes to the Wells Fargo Center. But no, it's true. Like the last 2 weeks of December, the Sixers and Flyers aren't home because Disney on Ice is here, and then sometimes the circus.
That's fucking hysterical.
Yeah, it's true. Look, the Flyers' last home game before 2019 is Saturday, December 22nd. Then the last week of December at New York, at Tampa, at Florida, at Carolina. Because
that's hilarious.
Disney on Ice is here.
I can't with you. I can't do it anymore. I can't.
Yeah.
I believe you. I do. I really do. I believe
Then
you.
at some point in February, the Globetrotters come, but they just use the Sixers court.
I do you. I believe you. Sorry.
You do me. Jeez.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Buy me
So
some dinner first.
let's. Anything else you want to wrap up for the Eagles before you finish this pod?
You mentioned the Bruins a little bit. Do you have any other thoughts on the team and where you think they where they're at right now?
I think Bergeron, not having him out there is huge, and whereas last season the young guys were scoring a ton more. I mean, they're still getting DeBrusque, who's a absolute stud and going to be a stud. Super young guy playing with Krejci second line, but their young guys were scoring more last year than they were this year, which is hurting them a little bit. I mean, they still have a +8 goal differential. They're still, I mean, Tuukka has been tough, but they've, like I said, Halak has been staying on his head and getting all the big games. I mean, quite frankly, the biggest problem with the Bruins is health. Top to bottom, their top defense have been hurt virtually all season, and they're playing guys that were supposed to be in the AHL all year, and they're filling in all right, but they're not bad. And Marchand's having a little down year in terms of goal scoring, but he's definitely getting a lot more assists with with Pasta doing well, and now with Bergeron being out, it's sort of proof is in the pudding of how reliable or how much they both rely on each other, I should say. So for me, it's a waiting game for them to get healthy. As in Boston, you look up and the Patriots still the Patriots and will always be the Patriots and second in the American League or the AFC, I should say. And you look up after the Red Sox win the World Series, and the Bruins are right there in the playoffs, but not as good as they're doing, as good as they thought they would be doing, and mainly because Buffalo has just been on fire. But the other thing is the Celtics have been a huge disappointment in Boston, and last year everyone wanted Brad Stevens to win Coach of the Year, and this season they want, they're like, oh, is it time to get rid of him? Or everyone's blaming Gordon Hayward's because he was hurt all last year, and this year he's not. So it's just funny how things work and how quickly people turn on everyone else. But no, yeah, Bruins recap. Their defense needs to stay healthy, and Tuukka needs to figure out whatever he's got going on in his personal life. Because strange story, Jordy. Did you hear about this?
I have not heard about this.
So Tuukka Rask, I want to say a couple weeks ago, went out and left the team, and they said it was for personal matters, to attend to family business, personal matters. And Tuukka was gone for about 3-4 days, maybe, to like a weekend series. And originally they said indefinitely, like he's out dealing with stuff. And the rumor was he was, wasn't playing well all year. So mentally he was like, he needed a break or whatever. So people were ripping him, being like mental break day. He comes back and 3-4 days later, and everyone's like, okay, if it was like a death, it's more than 4 days. If it was a birth of a kid, if it was something crazy, it's more than just a 3-day or 2 game. You miss more than just 2 games, right? Or maybe whatever. So that, like, they would give a reason. Like if it was a birth in the family, you give a reason. Death in the family, you say bereavement, right? So he just disappeared, left, and came back. Done decently since he's come back, played in 2-3 games since he's been back, but still super sketchy, still super, like, everyone's questioning what happened. And the funny thing is, Jordy, the rumors out there right now circling, play with a bunch of guys from Winthrop, play with a bunch of guys from Eastie, and the rumors that everyone's hearing is 3 things. You ready for this?
Okay.
1, problem with his baby mama.
Oh.
Yeah. 2, some sort of sex scandal. Yeah. And 3 is someone beat up his baby mama or his wife. Something happened where one of the women in his life got hit or beat up, and everyone was afraid that he was going to get blamed for it or something like that. So
not good.
Not good rumors. Not great. And certainly not something you'd like to see.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a guy who the Bruins really made their franchise goalie, you hate to see him leave for unexcused absences, or sort of not unexcused, but you'd like to know what is going on. I guess that goes back to how much are we really owed, and we have to remember that they're people too, and all that. And I get that, and I respect that, I do, but it's just I don't know, something to think about, something to keep in mind, keep in the back of your head for moving forward, Jordy.
No, I'll keep an eye out on this. But Greg, I think that's going to do it for us.
All right,
good first episode, I think.
Hey, when you're doing this, go back and cut the whole Tuukka thing.
All right, I can go cut that.
Wasn't great. It was a terrible story.
I liked it. I was enthralled by it. I looked it up. His interview was pretty just kind of, I'm a family man. I was spending time with my family. There's nothing more important to me than my family. Yeah. So it's an interesting story. Definitely got to keep an eye out on it.
Yeah, for sure.
But anyway, Greg, great first episode. We'll be back. We're going to figure out how frequent we're going to do this. If you guys have a thought, you want to see weekly, every 2 weeks, we're kind of leaning towards the latter right now. But if you want it weekly, let us know in the comments. We're kind of figuring out how we're going to keep the format going.
Make sure you guys make sure everyone harasses Jordy on Twitter and Instagram about his non-iPhone, and he's the guy in group chats that great messages. He's the guy that can't do FaceTime. He's that.
He can do FaceTime.
He's that a-hole.
Google FaceTimes, buddy.
He's that a-hole. He's that a-hole that you have to use. You have to use Facebook Messenger to FaceTime with.
No, my phone does FaceTime. That's fake news. Fake news. But anyway, Greg, thank you so much for coming on. Even though you're phone shaming me, it's 2018. Don't phone shame me. Let everybody follow along the bullpen card on iTunes. Go subscribe to the podcast. Thunder BLG on Twitter. Thunderblogsports.com is the website. I promise you guys, I'll try to explain everything as I can. We're going to start getting the blogs back up, especially for the end of the college football season. Greg, thank you as always, my man.
Blue Line Icing
podcast. Go Flyers.
Go Bees.
I still believe. I'm not giving up on this team.
Go Bees.
Have a good night, everybody.
Peace. Go Bees.